Hey guys, welcome to Church Coffee, Christianity, Conservatism, Culture. I'm one of your hosts, Walter.
I'm your co-host, Rob, and today we have Jessica Wilson on from Open Door Ministries in Denver, Colorado, and we're going to talk to her a little bit about homelessness and in Denver and maybe just in the world in general, but most of the theological aspects of treating the homeless, the unhoused. Maybe we'll learn a little bit about what language we should be and should not be using theologically. And I'll let Walter take it off with the first question.
So, Jessica, how do you take your coffee and or caffeinated beverage of choice?
Yes, I take it always iced, never sweetened.
Wow, okay. Always iced, never sweetened. Now, in that, do you use any type of milk or oat milk or anything, or is it just
sometimes half and half? Yeah,
half and half? Okay.
Yeah.
Always
and every
iced.
once in a while, whiped cream on top, but I usually eat that off first,
Absolutely.
so the actual coffee is not sweet.
So last night, what was it? The night before, I woke up at 3 a.m. and worked all day, just couldn't go to sleep. I ate a burger and I made a sundae. I took we have Aldi's. I don't know if you have Aldi's in Denver, but I took one of their cheap ice cream sandwiches that's fake ice cream in the middle, took the cookie parts, put it on a sundae. This is really lame. Anyways, ate that. I didn't have whipped cream, unfortunately, and I don't know how that story connected. It was the whipped cream. That's what it was.
Whipped cream. Yes, I love it.
I love it too. So wait, even in the winter, you drink your coffee iced?
I don't drink drinks fast enough. So when I drink hot beverages, I have to reheat them 15 times. Yeah. And it gets annoying. So
yeah, I hear that. Cool.
Yeah, I'm a cold brew coffee fan in the summer because it is sticky and hot here in Virginia.
Yeah.
Dude, yes. I think it's gonna be like 103 today in Texas. So
hopefully you guys have less smoke than we have on the East Coast. The air quality index right now for us is in the 160s, which means it is severe for anyone. It is not good to be outside. But we'll move away from us. Jessica, what is your life story and how'd you get into ODM?
Yeah, I grew up in Arizona and have lived a few different places, but landed in Denver, I think 17 years ago. Got my MDiv at Denver Seminary and concurrently found out about Open Door Ministries and started, I think I celebrated my 16-year anniversary at Open Door Ministries. So that's kind of fun. Have really felt called to this kind of work probably since I was a kid, but didn't know it. But definitely since right after college, worked for another nonprofit in Chicago for a few years and just vented, that calling to kind of the overlooked of our world. So have gotten to continue that work at Open Door.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Cool. So MDiv at Denver Seminary. What was like one of your favorite courses?
Oh, well, we were talking about Danny Carroll, probably one of his. I think it was called Reading the Bible from the Two-Thirds World, something like that. But just most of our theology classes, we were reading, old dead white men. And his class was, we were reading out of liberation theology, feminist theology, just all sorts of different people with different backgrounds, most of us in this class, and just loved it.
Right.
So loved getting that perspective.
Okay. So on the theology aspect of thing, what is y'all's org's theology toward the homeless and or unhoused, and or what biblical principles shape the way you guys operate?
Yeah, I think what first came to mind was one of our core values, which is undisputed worth. So just believing that everyone has undisputed worth. And so just that idea of Imago Dei, we're made in the image of God, and it doesn't matter if, we're staff or a millionaire donor or someone who sleeps across the street at us every night and comes into our family room, which is kind of our drop-in center for people experiencing homelessness. Everyone's made in the image of God and deserves respect and love, and that Jesus can transform. So just that transforming work of Christ, we get to see that. And so that, I think, undergirds a lot of what we do. Yeah, and just everyone of the abundant life that Christ gives. So
yeah. I like that, the undisputed worth within something that I think is key. That I heard you said is this, like, the hope. There seemed to be like a hope that Christ can restore, or Christ can make can transform everybody. And I know, like, I'm in Dallas. Our homelessness it's actually spiked. It seems like it's gotten really out of hand. And there's times where I got to remind myself the undisputed worth or Imago Dei, and then I can quickly lose hope because I'm like, well, what's going to happen? Like, why can't this change or whatever? And just having to, this is my own personal issue, but having to remind myself that Christ can transform.
We're going to take a quick break and have a word from a sponsor. Shenandoah Coffee Roasters has been a staple of Charlottesville since 1993. They offer over 25 varieties of specialty, boutique, and gourmet coffee using only the finest Arabia coffee from all over the world. Coffee is their passion, and they painstakingly search out the best coffee available. Nothing is taken for granted as they continually strive to provide the best coffee they possibly can. They roast all their coffees to order based on the needs of their espresso bar, ensuring that only the freshest and highest quality coffee leaves their roasting house. Grab a cup at any of their 3 locations: Main Restaurant Preston, On the Corner, or on Ivy Road. Or order a bag online at shenandoahjoe.com. All right, our next question, what are some of the main causes you see how people become homeless, how they stay homeless? Like, what's kind of the rule of thumb, if there is top 3, maybe top 5 causes of homelessness or for the unhoused that you see in your organization?
Yeah. So this is not based on any scientific research, but just observing over the last few years.
Which is part of scientific research.
Okay. That's true. When I think about it, I think disconnection and lack of community, which then kind of feeds into lack of safety nets and choices. My first boss in Chicago, when I started in this kind of work, we worked with men in prostitution. And he said, the guys we're working with, you can't just say make different choices, because the guys we're working with have much different choices in front of them than you or I do. And that just has stuck with me for almost 20 years, that the choices I have gotten to make in my life are not the same as the men and women that we see who are unhoused. So just that disconnection, lack of safety nets, lack of community. I do think addiction and mental illness are big contributors. Whether those come first or homelessness comes first, everyone's story is different. But we have a lot of people in our community who would be, I think, I don't know if this is still the correct term, but dual diagnosis. So they are dealing with some sort of an addiction and a mental illness, often untreated or undertreated. So those 2 things. And then there is people who have made crappy choices or that have had horrible things done to them. So that trauma plays a big part as well.
Yeah, I've definitely seen the dual problem in my own life. My dad's brother is highly OCD, to the point like when he was starting to fall through the cracks, he would get a job. I think the last full-time job he had was at a 7-Eleven or Lucky Day 7 or something. And his OCD was so bad he couldn't stock the shelves because he was constantly rearranging the entire store. And so, yeah, I also kind of see that kind of lack of community, because he either pushed people away or family members gave him, tried again and again and again, and he didn't want to take his medication. Now he is also homeless, alcoholic, and he also just doesn't want to accept any help, and that is part of that mental illness.
Yeah.
He goes, no, I'm fine. I like sleeping at a bus stop. And it's like, are you sure? So it's also, and I'm sure that varies state by state as well. Like Virginia, where I live, is very, like, you have to commit crime to be able to be put away. I know, and I'm not sure which other states, but I know in some other states, like if a spouse or immediate family members, like, this person needs to have professional help, you can, maybe get 90 days or something like that.
Yep.
But
Yep.
It's just such a patchwork.
Yeah.
And I guess to that extent, the stigma of homelessness can also affect how we treat a person. What are some ways, like some practical ways that you would encourage, and also some activities you would avoid when interacting with the unhoused, with homeless people?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece is that, going back to that Imago Dei, giving people dignity, which means looking people in the eye and saying hello, instead of ignoring, or even worse, being rude or cruel, and learning names. I mean, if you're in an area where you start to recognize men and women, maybe they're flying a sign, maybe they're just hanging out in the same doorway every day. There's such power in knowing someone's name and calling them by name. They may or may not give you their real name, but that's okay. Just trying to remember the name they gave you. And looking someone in the eye, trying not to be, I would say, driven by fear. Sometimes we have mission groups that come to Open Door, like youth groups that do mission trips here, and we talk about the difference between being uncomfortable and unsafe. And we will do, everything we can to make sure you are not unsafe. But I think in our heads, when something is uncomfortable, we can kind of deem it as unsafe. So just really thinking through that, talking about it, like, does this just make me uncomfortable? And if so, why? And working through that, whether it's on your own or in a community.
I used to work for InterVarsity Christian Fellowship for, I think, 6 years, and I was part of it as a student and whatnot. And one thing I thought they always did a good job of, they would make you feel uncomfortable, but they'd also help you debrief it and say, and challenge you to be like, well, what is God? What are you learning about God? What are you learning about yourself? And what is God trying to show you? So I think it's good when mission groups can go and participate, and they can be discipled in that way. And whatnot. Let me tag on. Oh, let me ask a question, because this happened today. Okay. I was driving to one of my subs, one of their production shops, and I see a homeless individual, unhoused, whatever. And he's selling flowers. Read the sign, looked him in the eye, waved at him. But then there's that, but the traffic light is still red. And he's standing like, what am I going to do for this extended? I have acknowledged you.
Yeah.
Any real practical thoughts about that? Yeah.
I mean, this is just what I do. Sometimes that's what I do, hey, and sometimes I'll roll down my window and chat. If it's 103 degrees, I understand why you would not want to do that. But, sometimes you can do that. Just say, hey, how are you doing?
Okay.
I think what's probably the worst, and this is based on some conversations with people in our community, is the like all of a sudden I am so invested in my phone or the radio or whatever. So I think if we can steer clear of that.
Okay.
And then, but also, and I, there are times that I'm ready to chat. And then there are times I'm like, I don't have it in me. And then there are times I feel really uncomfortable about it. And so I just afterwards kind of need to talk to myself and the Lord, like, okay, why did I react that way? And I think always be willing to do better the next time if we feel like we kind of fumbled the first time.
Gotcha. Okay, so how can an average person help an unhoused person? Like, giving money, giving food and or clothing. Then what items are most helpful for individuals? And
I think probably the most used or the most asked for item at Open Door is socks. And shoes too. Shoes are just generally not a donation we usually get, but the amount of time men and women experiencing homelessness spend on their feet, I mean, it's crazy. So just having new, clean, good socks for people is great. And again, shoes, depending on weather, we get a lot of hand warmers donated in the winter and go through them so quickly. So those are some things, and just hygiene items. But I always laugh a little bit when we get the donations of like the big Costco size, shampoo and conditioner. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but not really realistic for our friends to carry around. So travel size of that. As far as money, I was thinking about it and I thought, I think I'll say have rules that you're willing to break, because I generally have a rule that I don't give out money. And I can talk through why, but there are times, I would love to say I do it every time I'm asked for money, but I don't, that I really kind of send up a quick prayer. And there have been times where maybe it was something I ate, but I really think it was the Holy Spirit that was like, nope, I give this person whatever. And so I've done that. But my default is no on money. And it goes, I just think people are more likely to be truly helped, usually by an organization or a church or a nonprofit, whatever, who does this all the time, rather than one individual. Now, I know there are times when one individual can create this lasting change. So I want to be aware of that. But I think in general, so another thing I think is great is to know what resources are in your community. So if you do come across a mom and two kids, in a parking lot asking for certain things, to have in your mind or have a brochure in your car, like these are places you could go. So, and just knowing, another thing I'd add on to that too is, sometimes our hearts can be bigger than what we can actually do. So just be careful not to promise things that you can't follow through with. But yeah, I generally don't do money. If someone is asking for money for food or gas, which happens a lot, I will often offer to go get them food or go get them, I'll meet you at the gas station. I would say most of the time they're like, never mind. So, but I've made the offer. So yeah, sorry, that's a convoluted answer, but
no, I have found that too. I did some homeless outreach for a summer, and part of my training, they're like, yeah, don't give money, but if they're asking for food or gas, like be like, yeah, I'll meet you in 5 minutes. And anytime, it's very sad. Anytime, like I don't remember a single time when I'm like, I will there's a guy right near a coffee shop that I really like, and he's like, hey, I need some money. I was like, I won't buy you money, but I'll I'll go get you a cup of coffee, or I'll go get you a biscuit or something. He goes, nah, I'm good, thanks. And
Yep.
It's just very sad.
It is sad, and
Because if someone offered me a free cup of coffee, or like, hey, I'll get you a protein ball, or I'll get you a cinnamon roll, I'll be like, yeah, I'm in.
right. I mean, most of the people who are asking are in survival mode, and so I don't think I can ever. I can say I have been in that level of survival mode. So I don't know what I would do. I don't know, where I'd lie or cheat or steal. So it is sad and also understandable. And so that's what makes, conversations like this, there's no easy answer. So Jesus coming back, but that's,
Well, according to my calculations, I think it's in 3 years, right? No, that's a joke. That's a joke.
Okay. So no.
So homelessness has roughly nationally seen a pretty solid rise since the start of COVID. That trend happened in Denver, and if so, what are your observations about the rise over the past 3 or 4 years? Because I've been in Denver several times over the past 5-6 years, and one was just last summer, and I really love downtown area. I really love the River Arts North District area, and that the River Arts District area is really pretty. But last summer was the first time I remember being like, there's an awful lot of homeless around here that I just hadn't seen before. Not that I'm a regular Denver resident, but just you've kind of flowed in and out, and you can kind of see the contrast a lot starker. So I'm just wondering, your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think your observation is correct. What I don't know, and I could look it up, but is if the actual number of people experiencing homelessness has gone up since COVID, but 100% the visibility has gone up. So whether or not just people were more hidden before, I'm not sure. But during COVID, we just had these encampments pop up all over downtown and the surrounding areas, and even beyond. A lot of our suburbs are kind of now waking up to, homelessness is not just an issue in downtown Denver. Like, we need to have conversations about it in Parker and Highlands Ranch and Broomfield. So, and why that is, I don't know. These are guesses, but I wonder if people were kind of that one step away from homelessness. So maybe staying with friends or family, or just maybe they had their own place, but were one paycheck away. And then COVID happened, and, you're overnight out of a job. Or people are scared, and so, no, you can't stay with us anymore. So there could be some of that. And then I'm wondering, Denver, like downtown Denver, was pretty empty for, I would say, a solid 2-3 months. And so if there wasn't some safety in that these encampments could pop up, and there just weren't a lot of people to complain about it. So it was allowed to happen. And now 3 years later, there's still no solution to it.
And then I'm always interested in what are some Christian resources you recommend our listeners read, or maybe someone's podcast, or an episode of a podcast, or articles, books, blogs, Twitter accounts, just anything to help thread the needle, I guess, on this issue.
Yeah, the ones that came to mind, one is a very old book called Theirs is the Kingdom by Robert Lupton. By very old, let me see, when was it? 1989. So some of the stories are going to be very outdated, and it's not all about homelessness, but it's about the overlooked and just the compassion, and what we can learn from people that we often overlook. So highly recommend Theirs is the Kingdom. I also read a book called The Weight of Mercy by Deb Richardson Moore. It's kind of a memoir. She is a pastor. Oh, geez, I can't remember if it's on the East Coast or somewhere in the South, but for a church that is mainly people experiencing homelessness. And it's just her stories. Some are hilarious, some are very sad, but I especially recommend it to any woman going into this kind of ministry, because it just almost every page I was like, oh, me too. And yeah, it's a great read. And then there's a book called The Power of Proximity by Michelle Warren. And I'm friends with Michelle Warren. She's the wife of our executive director here at Open Door. So the book is called The Power of Proximity. And that ties into, I think, the greatest resource for wanting to learn about homelessness is relationship. Go and start volunteering somewhere. Learn people's names. I think that's the greatest way you're going to learn. And her book just does a great job talking about being in proximity of, if you want to make changes, if you want to learn, you have to be in proximity of the people that you're hoping to learn from or impact in some way.
I'm going to add on one bonus question. To that end, is there a homeless person that has impacted you in that way, or maybe a particular feeling that's really impacted you? I know you started this 15-20 years ago, so I'm sure there's a lot of them, but if you just want to share one or two or however many.
The first person that came to mind is a gentleman named James, but his kind of street name was Stitch. And he's someone I met when I first came to Open Door, so 16, 17 years ago. He did pass away during COVID, not from COVID, but so had a relationship with him probably for almost 15 years. And he was one of those guys who in some ways was happy on the street. And I didn't understand that for the longest time. And I still don't necessarily understand it. But there were 2 different times he went into our men's housing. And I remember talking to him after one of the times. And, where I would see that as freedom, you're leaving the streets to be housed. The way he talked about having 4 walls and a ceiling, just feeling so closed in, and how that was not freedom to him. And though I might disagree with him, I can't disagree with the way he feels. That's the way, he feels and was experiencing it. So he just taught me a lot of it's not, the answer is not as simple as housing. And everyone is created so differently, but he had a daughter who he loved so much, and had a grandchild, and kept us all, he would show us pictures. He was just so proud, but also wanted what he thought was freedom to do whatever he wanted to do. And so the streets were where he felt at home. And that, I think, eventually led to his death. If what we heard was correct, was just not getting, the health care that he needed, and eventually passing away from a seizure disorder. And so I think, him teaching me, the men, we can sometimes see people in very one-dimensional, like, oh, they're homeless, and we put them in a box. Excuse me. But this was a father and a grandfather. And, he had this whole history and life. And I would have never known it, had I just been, oh, you're homeless, I'm going to keep on walking, sort of thing. I don't know. I could come up with many people, but he's the first one who came to mind.
Thank you for telling James a story, or Stitch's story, whichever one we're going to do. Jessica, thank you so much. Where can we find you or Open Door Ministries?
Thank you. odmdenver.org. You can go and see all the things we do. We've got 4 different focus areas, especially if you live in Denver. Love to have you come down to the block and visit and volunteer. So odmdenver.org.
All right. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on Church Coffee. And,
thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Our album art was done by my wife, and our theme music was composed by TJ Stokes.